Welcome to Sellcology. I'm Jonathan Dawson. I'm going to be sharing with you how to use Sellcology to sell more cars. Sellcology means understanding how to sell through psychology. That means knowing what to say or do, how to say or do it, and most importantly, why you should say or do that thing. I want to teach you the principles behind the techniques rather than just giving you a series of word tracks. I believe that a salesperson who understands why something works is more empowered, educated, and effective as a salesperson. So my goal is to share with you the principles that underline and support all these great techniques, some of which you may have actually used already. Before you go through the courses, I need you to become familiar with some basic terms and definitions. As I said, the word Sellcology just means selling techniques based on psychological principles, or if you'd like, selling through psychology. There are several principles that you need to learn in order to be an effective sellcologist. The first principle is the idea of proactivity. We'll be spending a lot of time focusing on how to become a more proactive salesperson. Proactive means that you anticipate and address questions and concerns of your customer before they come up, and that you handle them before they come up. So, most salespeople, like myself, have been taught how to overcome objections. And when this happens, you're supposed to do this. And when the customer says this, you're supposed to say that. It is not going to be the focus of my training, though. My time will be focused on how to proactively remove objections even before they come up. The second core principle you need to learn is the idea of being prepared. All great salespeople are prepared. They know what to do when situations do arise. You are being prepared by anticipating and addressing questions and concerns when they come up, knowing what to say, how to say it, and in a way that makes sense for the situation. So we are going to talk about situations that you encounter every single day, how to be proactive with them and make them happen less to you, and how to be prepared for them so when they happen, you're more effective. Here are a couple of other principles you'll need to learn. I use the idea of pattern interrupt a lot in my teaching. Pattern interrupt is one of those really phenomenal techniques in psychology. It's really interrupting someone's pattern of thought by doing or saying something that they're not expecting in order to be able to introduce a new idea or emotion. I have a fun story using pattern interrupt because it was the best use of pattern interrupt that I've ever experienced. Picture this. I'm in my house on a Sunday. I'm relaxing when I hear a knock on my door. As I open the front door, I see a young man. He's standing there and he says this to me. "Good afternoon, sir. I have pudding in my pants, but that's not the reason that I'm here." Well, I was confused. I didn't understand what he was saying. I said, "I'm sorry, you have what?" He said, "I have pudding in my pants, but that's not why I'm here. And if it's okay with you, I'd rather not talk about it." Well, now I was really confused. I said, "What are you doing then? I don't understand." He said, "Well, thanks for asking. And since you did, I'll go ahead and tell you." And he reaches into his back pocket and he grabs a brochure, and he was offering me magazines on a subscription. As he begins to go through his presentation on the magazines, I'm still confused about this whole pudding thing. So I say, "Oh, okay, wait a second. Okay, so you're selling magazine subscriptions." He says, "Actually, sir, the last thing I'm going to do is ask you to buy a magazine today." Now I'm really confused. I tell him, "I don't understand. Well, what are you doing then?" He said, "Well, since you asked, I'll continue." And he goes right back into his presentation. And a couple minutes later, he offers me a subscription and says, "Based on what you've told me, sir, I recommend this one and this one." Well, now I'm confused. I don't know what's going on. I said, "Wait a second. I thought you said you weren't going to try to sell me a magazine." He replied with a smile, "Actually, sir, if you recall what I said, was the last thing I would do is ask you to buy a magazine, and we're pretty much done. This is the last thing." At this point, I was hooked. He had knocked me so far off my game, I couldn't object. I couldn't barely stand on my own 2 feet, and he sold me 3 magazine subscriptions. That was an example of a pattern interrupt. The salesperson completely interrupted my pattern of thought. He knocked me off my game. Great salespeople understand this principle, and they use it daily with their customers to keep the customer on their track instead of on the customer's track. In this training, I'll be teaching you multiple ways to pattern interrupt, because I'm not going to ask you to greet people and tell them that you have pudding in your pants, but I am going to ask you to use the pattern interrupt technique. The next principle I'll share with you is the principle of give-get. The principle of give-get is the act of requiring something of value in return for giving up something of value. So when a customer asks you for something, you need to apply the principle of give-get, which means you need to require them to give you something in return. Too often salespeople just agree to do whatever the customer asks, like getting a lower payment or more for their trade. The principle of give-get says that if you want something from me, that's fine. I'll do it under one condition. You should memorize that phrase actually and use it as much as possible. I'll do that for you under one condition. When you say this, first of all, it's a type of pattern interrupt because the customer doesn't expect that to happen. And then you can actually introduce your condition. Your condition could be that I'll do that if you can put more cash down, for example, to get a lower payment. Or I'll do that if you consider a different color if you want a lower price. The idea is that if you ask for something in return, you're going to get something. Otherwise, you're conditioning your customer simply to get rewarded for asking for things. Some of my students have used this principle of give-get to get more referrals. Imagine the next time a customer wants a discount, you turn the tables and say, listen, if you and I can come to agreement on this deal, and I feel like we can, we're pretty close here. All you need to do now is give me some more referrals. What if you told the customer, I'll work with you on the deal under one condition? That's a great technique. Don't send me to the manager empty-handed. Tell the customer, give me a sheet of paper with a bunch of names written down. Give them 5 blanks and have them feed you 5 names and 5 phone numbers that you can go and call on after you sell them a vehicle. If you had that way when you go to the management, you have something in your hand. Buddy, you'll go to the front of the line with something like that. So give-get means I'm happy to do something for you under one condition. Another principle is simply the principle of leverage. It's applying pressure using something of value in order to cause movement in another desired area. I believe in pressuring people to buy. There's nothing wrong with pressuring someone to buy if you're using the right pressure for the right reasons. I believe that if you care about people, you should pressure them to do the right thing for themselves. If my friend is thinking about leaving his family, I would pressure him to stay in and fight for his family. And I can pressure my customers to do business with me if I believe that it's the right thing for them. But again, you need to use it in the right way and for the right reasons. So understanding leverage means you find out what is the core leverage that you have with a customer to get them to take action. Here's an example. I was in Iowa working with a sales team, and this one had a salesperson who was trying to close a deal with this couple on a van. I had observed his customer for a couple of hours and that they'd been going through several cigarettes while they were waiting. This customer just kept smoking. It seemed like he had smoked a couple of packs while he was waiting for the deal to kind of get finalized. I casually asked the customer if he normally smoked this much, and he said no, not normally. He said that he's pretty stressed and he smokes more when he's stressed. And then he chatted with me for a few minutes telling me that he wants to quit and that he's been trying to quit. Well, I knew that, so when I went in on the close, I knew that this gentleman wanted to buy a van for his family, but the monthly payments were $60 higher than he was prepared to pay. And I also knew that I had somebody here who was paying as much as $5 a pack and smoking several packs a week. But now he's complaining about $60 on a payment. So, as a close, all I did was this. I said, you know, folks, I know that the payment is higher than you want for your monthly budget. I also know, sir, that you want to quit smoking and that right now you're smoking enough cigarettes every month to offset the cost of this payment. So the real question is, do you want your wife and your kids to get this new van, or do you want to keep a habit that you know is hurting you? I'll let you guys talk about it, and I'll be back in just a minute. As I got up to walk away, you could see the look on his face. He knew he was stuck. I had leverage. You need to learn how to use leverage to get someone to take action when it's in their own best interest. So, in this course, we'll talk a lot about things like the principles of proactivity, about being prepared, about using leverage, and of course, pattern interrupts. I hope you enjoy learning more about Sellcology.